She said, "You're his father now. Pay child support for life." I replied, "I'm not paying for a kid that isn't mine." Then I took her to court and walked away free. I'm 34, and when I look back at this past year, all I see is mistake after mistake. Honestly, it feels like I set fire to my own life. 1 year ago, I married a woman who had been divorced not long before we met. From the very start, things were complicated, and yet I kept convincing myself I was doing the right thing. The whole thing started in a way I never expected. She was the one who proposed to me. That moment caught me completely off guard. I'd never had a woman look me in the eye and ask for marriage before. My first instinct was hesitation, not because I didn't like her, but because everything felt rushed and uncertain. I didn't give her an answer right away. I told her I needed time. And for almost a year, I dragged my feet, going back and forth in my mind. During that year, I kept trying to weigh everything out. She was charming in her own way. She had this confidence about her, like she knew exactly what she wanted out of life. And part of me thought maybe I was the hesitant one. Maybe I was holding myself back. Eventually, I caved. I told myself that waiting so long to say yes meant I had thought it through carefully. I convinced myself it was patience, maturity, and love guiding me. But now, looking back, I realize it wasn't maturity at all. It was me ignoring the red flags right in front of me. One of the first things I knew about her was that she had a child from her previous marriage. She never hid that, and I respected her honesty about it. She also received financial support every month from her ex-husband, which she openly mentioned once or twice. I didn't see it as a problem at the time. I thought, that's their arrangement. It has nothing to do with me. But the real problem was something else entirely. I had no idea why her first marriage ended. Every time I tried to ask, she brushed me off. I remember one evening, sitting on the couch, casually asking, "So, what really happened between you and your ex-husband?" She paused, gave a half smile, and then said something like, "It's in the past, I don't want to talk about it." And just like that, she'd changed the subject. At first, I told myself it was okay. Maybe it was too painful for her to revisit. Maybe she wasn't ready to open up. I wanted to respect her boundaries, so I dropped it. But deep down, there was this gnawing feeling inside me. Something didn't add up. Why was she so unwilling to share even a little bit of her side of the story? People don't usually shut down every single time unless there's more to it. Still, I silenced my gut and told myself not to push her. I wanted to be the understanding partner, the man who respected her past. That decision, choosing to stay silent instead of pressing for answers, was my first real mistake. The wedding itself wasn't grand or over the top. It was small, intimate, just a handful of people. I remember standing there, looking at her in her dress, thinking maybe this was it. The new chapter, the second chance for both of us. I thought I was stepping into love, commitment, and something we could build together. But here I am, a year later, realizing that the silence I ignored back then was the very thing that would unravel everything. I should have trusted my gut when she avoided talking about her ex. Instead, I convinced myself love was enough. Now, I can't help but wonder if that's the exact mistake her ex-husband refused to make. The first few weeks of marriage felt normal, maybe even hopeful. We'd go out for dinner, watch movies at home, and talk about plans for the future. I really believed we were laying the foundation for something strong. But slowly, almost like water seeping through cracks in a wall, problems started showing up. At first, I brushed them off as small annoyances, but they piled up in ways I couldn't ignore. The arguments started over the smallest things. One night, she told me to cook dinner for her. I didn't think much of it. I've always believed that marriage is about compromise. Sometimes you do things for the other person even if you're tired. So I went into the kitchen, threw something together, and served us both. She ate without complaint, and I thought, okay, this is fine. We're figuring things out. But then it became a pattern. Almost every evening, she'd expect me to cook. At first, I didn't mind. I thought maybe she was still settling into the new marriage. Maybe she wasn't used to sharing responsibilities yet. But one day, I asked her if she could cook for me. I wasn't demanding, just casually said, "Hey, can you make dinner tonight? I had a long day." Her response stunned me. She looked at me and said flat out, "I don't like cooking. I don't want to do it. It's a waste of my time." It wasn't just the words. It was the complete lack of willingness to even try. Not, "I'm tired," or "maybe tomorrow," but a firm refusal. And what cut deeper was that she said it with this finality, as if it was ridiculous of me to even ask. That moment stuck with me. I realized it wasn't about cooking, it was about effort. She didn't want to meet me halfway, not even once. She expected me to shoulder the responsibilities while she stayed in her own lane. I kept telling myself maybe she needed time. Divorce is hard. Adjusting to a new marriage with a child already in the picture must have been overwhelming for her. I tried to be patient. I thought if I showed consistency, If I gave love and care without keeping score, she'd eventually soften and reciprocate. But weeks turned into months, and nothing changed. She wouldn't cook, wouldn't clean, wouldn't take initiative in the household. When I brought it up, she brushed it aside or made me feel like I was overreacting. It was like she saw our home as a hotel. Her needs were met, but she didn't think about what I needed. Sometimes I caught myself wondering, was this how she treated her ex-husband too? Was this why their marriage ended? The thought lingered in my mind, but I pushed it away because I didn't want to admit it might be true. There were nights I sat alone at the dinner table, eating something I had cooked for both of us while she sat in the other room, scrolling on her phone. I'd hear her laugh at something on social media, completely detached from what was happening between us. It was a kind of loneliness I can't explain. To live with someone, to share a home, and still feel utterly alone. It's worse than being single. I didn't want to give up too easily. Some people might say I was being foolish, that I should have walked away when I saw her unwillingness to put in effort. But I genuinely loved her. I thought love meant fighting for the marriage, even when it was hard. I wanted to prove to myself I wasn't the kind of man who quit at the first sign of trouble. But deep down, a quiet voice kept whispering that this wasn't trouble, it was a pattern. A one-sided marriage where only one person was trying. And that voice, though quiet at first, kept growing louder. After a few months, I reached my breaking point. I had been cooking every meal, managing the household, and trying to create some sense of partnership, but she never once met me halfway. It felt like I was carrying the entire marriage on my shoulders while she sat back and acted like that was normal. One evening, after a long day, I decided I wasn't going to cook. I thought maybe if I stopped doing everything, she'd realize the imbalance and step up. Instead, when she came home and saw no food on the table, she just shrugged and ordered takeout for herself and her child. She didn't even ask if I wanted anything. She just sat there eating while I made myself a sandwich in silence. That was the moment it clicked for me. This wasn't a marriage. It was an arrangement where I gave and she took. There was no we in it. It was me exhausting myself and her acting like that was the way things were supposed to be. I started pulling back little by little. I stopped trying to cook for us, stopped doing small things to keep the house in order. Instead of stepping in, she carried on as if nothing was wrong. The distance between us grew wider, and she didn't seem to care. Eventually, I sat her down and told her the truth. I said, "This marriage isn't working. I don't feel like we're partners. I think we should get a divorce." She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She didn't even ask why. She just looked at me and said, "Okay." Her calmness threw me off. A part of me thought maybe she had been expecting this all along. But then, just when I thought it would be a quiet, mutual separation, she dropped a bombshell. She said she wanted alimony and child support for her son. I was stunned. Her son wasn't mine. He had a father who was already paying financial support every single month. Why would I be responsible for that? I told her exactly that. He isn't my child. Your ex-husband is already supporting him. Why would you expect me to pay for him too? Her response chilled me. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're his father now. You married me, and with that comes responsibility. You'll be paying for him for the rest of his life." I couldn't believe the words coming out of her mouth. It wasn't about the money itself. It was the entitlement, the manipulation behind it. She wasn't asking me out of desperation. She was demanding it like it was her right, like she had been planning for this outcome from the start. I remember sitting there, speechless. My mind was racing, replaying every moment I had ignored my instincts. The way she avoided talking about her past marriage. The way she never put effort into ours. The way she took without giving. And now, the final twist, she wanted to trap me financially for a child who wasn't mine. It was like I was suddenly seeing the whole picture clearly for the first time. Her ex-husband had walked away, and maybe now I understood why. Maybe he had seen the same side of her that I was just waking up to. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, asking myself how I could have been so blind. I had told myself over and over that love was enough. That patience and sacrifice would eventually pay off. But love doesn't survive in a one-sided marriage, and sacrifice means nothing when the other person only sees it as your duty. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her ruin my future the way she had ruined my past year. When she first said she wanted alimony and lifetime child support, I honestly thought she was joking. I even laughed a little, waiting for her to smile and say she was testing me. But she didn't laugh. Her face was cold and determined. I repeated myself slowly, trying to make sure we were on the same page. He's not my child. His father already supports him. I'm not paying for him. That's not how this works. She didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned back in her chair and said, "No. Now you're his father too. You married me. You took on this responsibility." That single sentence flipped my world upside down. It wasn't about meals or household chores anymore. It was about her trying to trap me into a financial role I never agreed to. It felt like she had been waiting for this moment, like she saw marriage less as a partnership and more as a way to secure a second provider. I sat there in disbelief. My mind replayed all the times I had asked about her previous marriage and how she had brushed me off. Suddenly, it all started to make sense. Maybe this was why her ex-husband had left. Maybe he had gone through the exact same cycle I was going through now. The thought was like a punch to the gut. Still, I tried to stay calm. I told her, listen, I don't mind helping out when I can, but you can't expect me to take over a responsibility that isn't mine. His father already does that. Her response was colder than ice. So what? You don't care about us. You don't care about this family? You're heartless. That word, heartless, hit me harder than I expected. I had spent months trying to hold this marriage together, cooking for her, sacrificing my own time and energy, giving her chance after chance to show even a little effort. And now she was accusing me of not caring because I refused to let her drain me financially for something I had no obligation to. I realized then that she didn't see me as a partner. She saw me as a tool, a paycheck, someone who could take over the burdens her ex had left behind. The more I thought about it, the more it terrified me. I wasn't just dealing with a broken marriage. I was staring at a trap. If I wasn't careful, I could end up legally bound to a responsibility that could ruin me for years, maybe decades. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering how I had ignored all the warning signs. She had hidden her past, avoided conversations about why her first marriage ended, refused to contribute to our own relationship, and now here I was, being told I had to pay for her child as if I had signed up for it. The truth was brutal. I had ignored my gut. I had silenced every red flag because I wanted love to be enough. But love doesn't survive when only one person is giving. Love doesn't mean handing over your future out of guilt or fear. The next day, I tried one more time to reason with her. I sat her down and said, this isn't fair. You're asking me to carry a burden that isn't mine. We were supposed to build a life together, not put everything on my back. Her face hardened. If you can't do this, then you're not the man I thought you were. That sentence didn't break me, it freed me. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't the man she thought I was. I wasn't someone who would let himself be manipulated into giving up his future. I wasn't going to repeat the same mistake her ex-husband had escaped from. After that conversation, I knew I couldn't keep handling this on my own. The more I thought about her demand for lifetime child support, the more I realized I needed professional help. I contacted a divorce lawyer. I'll admit, I was nervous. Divorce isn't simple, and I knew how messy things could get, especially when children are involved. Even though her son wasn't mine, I'd read enough cases to know courts sometimes blur lines when it comes to stepchildren. For a moment, I feared the worst, that somehow, despite not being the biological father and never adopting him, I'd still be held financially responsible. When I explained everything, my lawyer reassured me. He said, you didn't adopt the child, you're not his father, and legally you can't be forced to pay child support. As long as we're clear on that, you'll be fine. Hearing those words was like a weight lifting off my chest. For the first time in months, I felt a sliver of relief. But the battle was far from over. The moment she realized I had hired a lawyer, her tone changed completely. It was as if she flipped a switch. Suddenly, she wasn't demanding anymore. She was guilt-tripping. I started getting texts like, you're ruining a child's life. How can you abandon me when I need you most? You promised to protect this marriage. Those messages cut deep, not because I believed them, but because I had once believed in us. I had promised to protect the marriage, but that only works if both people are trying. She never once tried. She never once compromised. And now, instead of admitting her own lack of effort, she was trying to pin the blame on me. I ignored most of her texts, but some nights I'd sit there rereading them, asking myself if maybe I was heartless. Maybe I should have tried harder. Maybe I should have given her more time. But then I'd remind myself of all those dinners I made alone, of all those nights I sat by myself while she laughed at her phone in the other room, of her cold demand that I pay for a child that wasn't mine. That guilt she tried to throw at me didn't change the truth. When the divorce process officially started, she didn't make it easy. She tried to drag things out, filing motions and making demands that had no basis in reality. She claimed she needed financial support for herself because she had sacrificed her happiness to marry me. That one nearly made me laugh in the courtroom. Sacrificed her happiness? She had spent the entire marriage taking, while I gave everything I could. My lawyer and I built a strong case. We laid out the facts. She contributed nothing to the household, refused to share responsibilities, dismissed every attempt at compromise, and even admitted she didn't want to do basic things like cook or help around the house. We highlighted how quickly she demanded alimony and child support the moment I mentioned divorce, painting a clear picture of manipulation. The more the hearings went on, the clearer it became to me. This wasn't just a difficult marriage. This was a trap. And the only reason I was walking free was because I had finally trusted my instincts and sought help. But even with my lawyer's confidence, I couldn't shake one thought from my head. If I hadn't hired him, if I had tried to settle this on my own, she might have bled me dry. She might have twisted things just enough to make it look like I owed her, and I could have spent years paying for a child who wasn't mine. That realization scared me more than anything else. The more the divorce dragged on, the more one thought kept circling in my mind. I'm not the father of her child, so why should I pay for him? I replayed that question over and over like a broken record. I had stepped into this marriage believing I was taking on a partner, not a lifelong bill for a child that wasn't mine. I never signed adoption papers. I never claimed that boy as my son. He already had a father, one who was paying support every month without fail. And yet, here I was, being told that by marrying her, I had automatically taken on responsibilities that didn't belong to me. It wasn't just frustrating, it was insulting. She wasn't asking me to be a stepdad out of love. She was demanding I become one out of obligation. That difference made everything feel transactional, like I wasn't her husband. I was just her second shot at a paycheck. Whenever I pushed back, her tactics shifted. She'd tell me, a real man would step up. She'd say, if you loved me, you'd love him too. Sometimes she even tried to twist it into morality. You can walk away from me, but how can you walk away from an innocent child? At first, those words stung. I'd sit awake at night, wondering if maybe I was a coward for refusing to take on that role. But then reality would hit me. Love can't be forced, and responsibility doesn't fall on you just because someone says so. That child wasn't mine, and she knew it. What broke me was how unapologetic she was. She didn't once say, I know this is hard, but can we figure it out? She didn't once acknowledge that maybe what she was asking was unreasonable. Instead, she stood on her demands like they were written in stone, like marriage had turned me into her son's father by magic. The coldest moment came one afternoon when we met to go over settlement discussions. I told her flat out, I will not pay child support for him. I'm not his father. Without blinking, she replied, then you were never really my husband. That sentence cut deeper than any insult. It told me everything I needed to know about how she saw me. I wasn't her partner. I wasn't her equal. To her, being a husband meant being her provider, no questions asked. That's when the guilt she tried to pour on me lost its power. I realized she wasn't asking me to be a husband or a stepdad. She was demanding I become her replacement for the man who had already walked away. And I finally understood why he had walked in the first place. I kept reminding myself, marriage is supposed to be a partnership. It's supposed to be two people lifting each other up. But in our case, it was me carrying everything while she waited for me to collapse so she could demand even more. By the time my lawyer and I prepared for the next hearing, I wasn't nervous anymore. I was angry. Angry that I had been blind enough to marry her. Angry that I ignored my instincts when she avoided every question about her past. Angry that I had let myself fall into the same trap another man had already escaped. But that anger also gave me strength. I wasn't going to let her win. I wasn't going to let her rewrite the truth and turn me into something I wasn't. I wasn't the father of her child, and no amount of manipulation was going to change that. The hearings felt like they dragged on forever. Every time we went into that courtroom, I felt the weight of what was at stake. It wasn't just about money. It was about my freedom, my future, my ability to walk away from a marriage that had drained me without being shackled to it for life. She didn't hold back. She tried everything she could to paint herself as the victim. At one point, she even claimed I had been emotionally abusive because I stopped cooking and doing chores after months of carrying the entire household on my own. She twisted the story to make it sound like I had neglected her, conveniently leaving out the part where she refused to contribute in any way. For a moment, I worried the court might believe her. Divorce laws can sometimes work in strange ways, especially when children are involved, and I knew how quickly things could turn against men in situations like this. But as the evidence unfolded, her version of events started to crumble. My lawyer presented everything. Her refusal to share responsibilities, her unrealistic demands for alimony and child support, the fact that her ex-husband was already providing for their child. Piece by piece, the picture became clear. This wasn't a case of a struggling woman abandoned by her husband. This was a case of a woman trying to manipulate the system to benefit herself. The judge saw it too. When the final ruling came, it was like a weight I had been carrying for months suddenly lifted. No alimony. No child support. A clean break. I can't put into words the relief I felt walking out of that courthouse. It was like stepping out of a dark tunnel into sunlight. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. But alongside that relief was regret. Deep regret. I kept asking myself how I could have been so blind. The red flags had been there from the very beginning. Her refusal to talk about her past, the imbalance in our marriage, the entitlement in her words and actions. I ignored all of it because I wanted to believe love was enough. Looking back now, I realize I wasn't just trying to love her, I was trying to save her. I thought my patience, my effort, and my sacrifices would somehow fix whatever was broken. But marriage isn't about one person saving the other. It's about two people choosing to walk together, equally. And that's the part one want others to hear. Don't ignore your instincts. Don't brush off red flags because you think they'll disappear once you're married. They won't. If anything, they'll grow bigger. And never let guilt push you into carrying responsibilities that don't belong to you. Love should never feel like a trap. Today, I'm free. I'm scarred, sure, but I'm also wiser. Hiring that divorce lawyer was the best decision I ever made. If I hadn't, I might have been tied to a lifetime of financial and emotional misery for a child who wasn't mine and a marriage that never was real. So now I'm sharing this story here, not to bash anyone, but as a warning. Take your time. Ask questions. Listen to your gut. Marriage can be beautiful, but it can also destroy you if you ignore the signs. I appreciate you watching till the end. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more content.